Hello, everyone. It is great to be back with you here on the Real Life Process podcast. My name is Teresa McCloy, and I get to host each and every week. And we have been in a great series where we've been talking about the tool of the Enneagram. And I always love inviting back my guest, Erica Vinson, when we have these conversations. Erica is a coach for us here at the Real Life Process. She also works for us inside the business, as I like to say, as our network director, helping our coaches stay on track with all that they're doing and getting certified and using the process and the work that they do. But she also, in her own right, is an Enneagram practitioner certified with one of our favorite programs, Motions of the Soul. So, Erica, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and well, it's always good to have you back. This might be your first time to be over on our YouTube channel as well. I'm not sure, but just as a reminder, we do have all of this over on our YouTube channel. So this may be your first YouTube experience. I'm not sure, but either way, it's great to have you back.
Thanks so much.
So, well, I thought today, as you work as a coach, uh, internally for us here at the Real Life Process, coaching our coaches, if that makes sense, using our process, and then the tool of the Enneagram is actually something that we do a not super deep dive, but a pretty high level dive with our coaches on using the tool. But then you also use it in the private coaching work that you do. And this episode is really going to dive in for those of you that are listening. We're going to dive into number one, a little bit of what is coaching, and then how would you use a tool like the Enneagram in a coach approach. So let's dive in first, Erica, just to how would we define coaching and what lens do we look through when we talk about coaching?
Well, that's a great question. There's so many good helping professions out there, and coaching. There's actually an author named Gary Collins who wrote a book called Christian Coaching, and he just says coaching is the art and practice of enabling individuals and groups to move from where they are to where they want to be. And
Mm.
so it's all about forward movement, identifying where I am and what's possible.
Yeah. And I love that approach of the forward movement. I remember in my own story just discovering as I was seeing, like, how does God want me to show up? How can I partner with people that I want to help, that I want to serve? And what's kind of the approach I want to take? And really realizing through both of us, we served together in ministry space, and that was an approach that we took kind of through discipleship. And then I moved into doing some spiritual direction training. And I remember sitting in the second year of spiritual direction going, I'm not sure this is quite it. And I just did what we all do at 3 a.m. and Googled coaching. And I came across what is actually defined as Christian coaching through the International Coach Federation. Ended up training at Professional Christian Coaching Institute in getting, all of that training. And you've kind of chosen the same path. But there's something about the forward movement that's different than some of the other things. Can you say a little bit about some of the other, what we call helping professions sometimes, and just how they're a little bit different than a coach approach?
Sure. Well, some others that we're familiar with, and some of our coaches within the network even function, and their role might be with clients. One of those is counseling. And so, counseling is really about healing past hurts and hangups. And so, often a counselor will look back in your story and invite you to notice, where a wound is, and maybe, dive deeper into that to provide some healing. Another profession is mentoring. And so,
Mhm.
really, focusing on the mentee and following, what are their strengths and their experiences, and how can they continue to maybe even model after some of the life work you've done. So if you're mentoring, we have a coach that works as a mentor for Baylor University, and so
Mhm,
she works with young college age students just to be that example and help to draw
mhm,
out how they want to move forward. A consultant is another helping profession, and so someone who is hired to come in and maybe do a meeting with a higher level leader and do some visioning of where a team might want to go. And they're paid really to come in and say, here's my expertise, and here's how I am trained, and here's how I can help you move from A to B. But they're more really directive with the work
mhm.
that they're doing. And then you mentioned spiritual direction. And spiritual direction really is about being present with a client as the Holy Spirit is also present. And it really is about listening and trusting and asking good questions, just to be very present with what God is doing in the moment in the life of that client.
And so those are all different ways that someone in the helping kind of profession might sit and show up. And I have often said to clients, and I know you have too, you might need more than one or two people on your team. And so we just wanted to define for you what is coaching. And within the Real Life Process network community, we have all of those. So
Yes.
today on the call, we're talking about coach approach. And we actually call now our people that are certified with us, we call them a coach because they're coaching our process. And we take a coach approach with that. But in the work that they do, they all show up differently. So we've defined what a coach is. And now let's think about this tool that we talk about, because many times a coach will have a tool in their tool belt, and all kinds of tools that we can use, from personality tools to assessment tools to all kinds of things. We never want them to be a crutch that we're depending on, right? But we love the tool of the Enneagram. And we use it through kind of one of the core competencies that the Coaching Federation often talks about, which is active listening, and really pulling in that active listening skill. So let's talk about that skill specifically, Erica. How do we define that skill, or how does the ICF define active listening?
Yeah, the International Coach Federation, it's actually competency 6 for those of you who are accredited coaches or interested in that type of coaching. But it just says focuses on what the client is and is not saying to fully understand what is being communicated in the context of the client's systems and to support client self expression.
So that's a really big definition, but I think it's helpful through the lens of that first part of is and is not saying. Because as we unpack the Enneagram just a little bit, it is that connection of listening, active listening for what's not being said. So, but before we get there in the actual application of the tool in a coaching conversation, let's talk about how you as a coach, or I as a coach, prepare ourselves and why the Enneagram can come in helpful even as that preparation to begin to actively listen. So, explain to us how a tool like the Enneagram might help us there.
Well, the Enneagram is so helpful in preparing for meeting with a client, because really noticing what your energy is like. If you're a really forward moving person, there's a great example right before we hopped on this call, Teresa, and knowing your Enneagram type, and you go, hey, just a minute, I'm going to write something down while it's in my brain so I don't forget it. And so, just that piece of self management to know before we even hop on to record this podcast, like there can be something that triggers me that takes my attention. And so it's really
Hmm.
noticing, am I needing to do any clearing
Hmm.
in self-awareness? Is there an emotion that's coming up in me? Am I fearful about, what this might be like? Do I need any further clarification? Do I need to turn off my notifications? But what self-management, and how can I be present to how I can bring my whole self to a call. So it can be a quick check in of what's going on in my head, anything I need to brain dump out and just write down. How's my heart? Do I need to say anything? Check in. with my feelings, my emotions, and then how's my body? Do I want to stand up? Do I want to sit down? As I'm working with this person and just paying attention to all of those things.
So Erica just referenced this three centers of intelligence. And if you haven't listened to or watched, I should say, this whole series that we've been doing on the Enneagram, go back a few episodes. We've done about 3 or 4 episodes now just to dive in a little deeper to what those three centers are. Because what we're really talking about now is the application of that information into a coaching conversation that you might have. So, all three places, checking in, head, heart, body, what's going on for you. Depending on how much coaching you're doing. So, I'll ask you this just personally, how much coaching you're doing. What can happen in between a couple of calls, just from a practical application standpoint? What feels good for you in between calls?
I have to have margin. And if I don't claim that space, often because I am an independent contractor and I work with different companies and then also individual clients, there can be distractions, or there can be an email that comes in, or a message, or something that's needed. And if I don't allow that space, then when I move from one client to the other, I'm kind of dragging in whatever baggage has
Yeah.
just happened in that moment.
Yeah. So that's been part of my discovery as a coach too, and owning my own company and having internal coaches and having a team and having some larger clients that I work with is finding what feels right for me in the amount of coaching conversations I can have. And I actually look at that through my Enneagram type. Like what feels good for me? Because my forward self wants to just go, yes, I can do all of that back to back to back. And I have learned over the last couple of years that for me to show up as my best self, I actually need a lot of margin. And I need to know that I can only do one, maybe two coaching appointments with clients per day. And right now in this season, I'm actually cutting way back because of other things that are going on in my personal life. So looking and using your own personality, knowledge, and information is so helpful. And you and I have that conversation a lot as friends of just, what that feels like for us in that space. So I think that's really helpful in the self-management piece. And now let's dive in a little bit more to the actual applying a tool like the Enneagram in a coaching conversation. Again, through that lens of active listening. So, what are just some basic things that you could give us awareness on as you're listening to a client through these three centers that might be going on in a coaching call?
Listening to clients' language is huge. And so, we talk about levels of listening. I mean, we're listening to be attentive, and some of that is that self management piece, but then moving a level down, even to say listening for, what is the client saying? And so, if they're coming with something that's exciting and that they're discerning and they're really wanting to process, like, this is good, or this might be a better option, and I just want to know, which decision I want to make, and I'm discerning that and I'm leaning in, we want to match that,
Mm-hmm.
even excitement, and be present with them. They may be coming with big feelings. And so the Enneagram can inform that they might be a heart centered person. And so to invite them, if they're coming with those big feelings of excitement, then to say, oh man, as that excitement, just shows up in your heart space, what's happening, that you're thinking about? What are some things that are going through your mind as you consider this option? What are some things you've actually done? If you could imagine telling your friends and family that you're going to choose this, what would that feel like in your body? And so just inviting them to explore all three centers. You don't have to dive into type to really feel the benefit of the Enneagram, but
Mm-hmm.
just tapping into all three centers of intelligence is huge.
I think that's really important about any tool that you use. You may know the tool really well. So, for both of us, we've studied the Enneagram for several years. We know it really well. It kind of naturally just flows out of it. But we have to make sure that we don't flow right over our client in this listening piece. And we're kind of holding back a little bit of what we know and what we feel, and what we might be able to project if we're not careful onto them. So it's that active listening is matching it, asking questions. For example, I'm a very forward moving type. So when I get on with a coach, I do want someone that can keep up with the pace that I might come with. So they're matching me, um, that they're understanding that I probably, when I leave a call, want some actionable steps and some things I'm going to move on right away, but to really also invite me to slow down and to move more into my body space or into my head space. I naturally come from the high energy 3 forward moving space. So I'm also looking for a coach who will draw me there a little bit more. How about for you, just even personally, when you think about a coach that's going to meet you in these places, what are you looking for?
Well, I told my coach when we were talking about approach, I said, obviously, as a head type and a natural thinker, questions are great. And I can do questions all day long and curiosity. But what I told him, I said, what I need though is direct communication. And
Mm,
so, not for you, I mean, that doesn't mean to tell your client, what to do, but just to be direct and maybe not ask a question. Wow, that's vulnerable, or that sounds risky, and not even in a judgmental way, but just really being able to observe what it is that a client says. And it might be towards a pain point. That's a pattern for you. That's something a
mm,
coach might say, acknowledging, like, is this a problem that my client is coming to explore, or is it a pattern? When I talk about something over and over, I've worked with my coach long enough, and that's the beauty of longevity in a relationship, but to be able to say, this is a pattern.
mhm.
What are you gonna do about that? How do you want that to
Oh, I
change?
love that. I love that. And I love what you say there too about working with someone over a long period of time. Um, and there's a difference in you and I as well. So sometimes I'm of the type or personality that will hire a coach for a specific um, skill set that they have or problem that they can solve. So I do lean towards sometimes the coach consultative type person. And I give my coach permission right up front to be that for me. That is my type, that's my energy. But I also have people that I've coached with and been with for a very, very, very long time. And I have a spiritual director that I've worked with for a very long time. Whereas your type, being more in the headspace of the loyalty and the safety and the devotion and faithfulness and all those places, that longevity then gives you the trust for that person to be very, very direct with you. So there's two ways that we're talking here. One is, how do you want to show up with your clients? And then how would you like for a coach to show up with you as well? So there's a both and to this relationship of coaching, the client seat and the coaching seat. And the Enneagram can be helpful in both places. Now, I want you to explore just for a little bit, Erica, as someone that's worked with the tool for a long time. Um, what do you see about the Enneagram that for you has given that longevity? Is there anything that comes to mind for you that you say, this is why for me, um, I haven't been able to find anything else that gives the same type of awareness that the Enneagram does? Say more about that.
Honestly, coupled with the work that we do with needs and values, it has been one of the most valuable, impactful tools, just because it's not something that you read and it just types you. It really is something that each and every day there's opportunities because of the way that it opens up awareness, to be able to say, what's going on here? When I'm triggered, when something hits me and, about my body tenses up, I can say in the moment, oh, that was actually something that was similar to an experience I had in the past. And that experience was painful. And so I can start to feel vulnerable. And I just checked in really quickly in the moment. The person I'm with has no idea, but I'm also able to self regulate in the moment and go, that is not the same situation we're in. So I'm able to
Mhm.
change even my thought there, which is a tool we have as well, the now tool. I'm able to change my thought, which changes my feeling, which changes my action, and then I get a different result. And so the Enneagram is great because it really helps you to be in the moment and just invites you to deeper levels of awareness.
Mm. And you mentioned a tool that we've kind of used and created into our own language called the now tool. This idea of noticing the moment, and you were just describing a moment just in the past week where, oops, something happened. There's a circumstance that came up. I'm a little bit triggered by that, or it brings back some old memories or whatever. And then to be able to check in again with those three centers. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you reacting or responding to that so that you can give a whole self response? Notice, open, whole self response. And those three centers, to be honest, as I listen to clients and coach with clients, they're always kind of pushing out of one center. And if I, as a coach, can open up all three to them with some great questions or direct responses or whatever it is, then those are to me where the aha moments come in a coaching call that then invites them to that forward energy. And I know you and I both love to do that. We both love to see that happen and all come together. It is a tool in your toolbox. It's not the only thing. You've mentioned several others, but it's a tool that both of us have found super valuable. So anything else you'd like to share as we kind of wrap up this conversation?
Well, I think whether, a client is coming, you think there's so many different reasons a person might hire a coach. And so just noticing, are they coming with fear? Are they coming with anxiety? And are they stuck in their head? Is it a client that, goodness, they're wanting to work on their values and they're wanting to really process how they interact with others, and that relational piece is important to them, and that's a heart space thing, that they're wanting to move forward in? Or do they have something that's just, man, they are noticing a sense of control that they're wanting, that's a body, and their health is out of whack? And so there's all different reasons that a client might say, like, I want to
Mm-hmm.
move forward in a different way. And I think that the Enneagram is a tool that can help us to be aware, as we said in coaching, of where we are and then where we want to be. And there's so many practices too that go along with the tool of the Enneagram that we can engage just to really help to bring us back towards that whole piece of our authentic self. And
Mm.
that's the goal, is really to say, hey, I'm out here on my edge, And I remember saying to my coach just last week, I was really ramped up about this when we started, and I just noticed my whole body is relaxed now that we're finishing this session.
Mm. That's a good session when you can go from one place to the other. So that's awesome. And so many times the Enneagram is described as a personality tool. And I don't disagree with that. But as you just said, there's so much more to it. Um, in involving all of myself. It's not just about my personality, but it's spiritual practices, it's God's invitation to different things. There's just so many layers to the tool. And we've just kind of touched the surface even in this series that we've done. But thank you for being with us just to say, how can I, as a coach, take something and actively listen with my clients through a lens. So we hope that you've had a takeaway today, whether you're a coach or whether you're not, whether this is like, wow, I could just use this in conversation with my spouse or with my kids or with a coworker. Just go back and listen again and say, how would I want to approach that conversation differently? So thanks for being with us, Erica. Always appreciate you being on the podcast with me and helping me to explore different things.
Well, it's always a joy, and I'm grateful to be here. We'll continue the conversation in the future, I know.
Yes, we will. And if someone wants to reach out to you, where is the best place that they can find Erica Vinson in the wide world?
Sure. Well, online, ericavinson.com is my website. You can also find me at thereallifeprocess.com, and we have a coaches page. And so I'm available there as well. And you can get to my website and some connection information there too.
All the things. Yes, we're always thrilled that she's a part of our team and has really helped to build up the work that we do here at the Real Life Process. So come check us out, thereallifeprocess.com. You can also watch us on the YouTube channel and check out our new book that's out in the world as well. Do What Matters, Live from Rust, Not Rush. So remember, everyone, that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. Have a great day today, and we'll be back next week with more from the Real Life Process podcast.